Good morning, everyone. My name is Felicity. Today we are in conversation with Kim and with Mbali about sexual health as a youth in South Africa. Mbali, if you want to start by introducing yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mbali Shongwe, and I'm the program manager for Black Health. I'm very keen for this conversation. I think there's lots to learn.
And then, Kim, you don't mind if I give you a quick little introduction?
No, go for it. I love it. I love to hear what people say about me.
Yeah.
Can I quickly ask what your pronouns are?
I don't really care. I found that having to correct people takes out more of my emotional labor and energy than just letting people speak. But I do prefer they and them. But really, it's neither here nor there. I know who I be.
Okay, great. As long as everyone's comfortable. So just to give you some background on Kim and the amazing work that you've done, Kim's a human rights defender and graduated from UCT with a degree in Western classical music. Kim, do you want to tell us a bit about that?
That's not what we know you for.
Yeah, I was raised in a very musical family, very artistic family. And I was obsessed with singing. My mom always said that I sang before I spoke.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And so I decided to go into the creative field. But then, I graduated from the University of Cape Town with music, but decided to go in a different direction. Already, I think halfway through my degree, I realized that I don't want to do singing. But as brown people...
Yeah, you have to finish what you started.
We paying dank money. I was like, okay. So I decided to rather finish and then go into the space, which I love.
100%. I think the space loves you back.
Yeah.
Shout
out.
I was going to say, fast forward to today, and you're a co-host of a show on Showmax titled Sex and Pleasure.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about your experience on that?
Yeah. Okay, so Sex and Pleasure is a show, as an 8-part docuseries that I created alongside Romantha Botha, who is a journalist, amazing human being. And so we came up with this 8-part docuseries and then reached out to a production company, Idea Candy. They also produced Rosemary's Hit List that just came out, Steinheist, Devil's Dorp, all of the major documentaries in South Africa. And we were like, we want to create a docuseries on sex that is very, very comprehensive and very layered in its complexity. So we decided to create an 8-part docuseries, each episode focusing on a different theme and how that theme relates to sex and pleasure. So the themes that we came up with was parenting and education. That was our first theme. Love and sex, second episode. Sex work and sex. Drugs and sex. Expression, orgasm and sex. Disability and sex. Age and sex. And then our final one, spirituality and sex, which, as you know, spirituality is a big factor in terms of how people view sex as well and pleasure in their day-to-day lives. And so the docuseries will just take you through, clinicians, doctors, other types of medical health practitioners, but also your anecdotal chats, like folks like me and you, or us sitting around chatting about sex and our own experiences. So it really takes you on a journey, and it shows South Africa completely, South Africans as how they understand sex and pleasure. And I really, really loved that. Yeah.
That's
awesome.
I actually wanted to ask you, out of the topics that you guys discuss on the show, what do you think, just from your perspective, like whether it's social media or your engagement with comments on the show, which do you think has given you the greatest response from the audience?
Oh, wow. Like which themes?
Yes.
Whoa. Wow, that's a very interesting one because you get different types of responses.
Okay.
I think the sex work one was one that people were very surprised by, especially about the progressive nature and where South Africa, in terms of its legal framework, lies when it comes to sex work. I mean, currently it is fully criminalized, so I don't want to, act like it's not. But we are working towards it being fully decriminalized by 2024. Parliament and various departments are very open to the discussions. It has been tabled. It is, it has been put out to the public vote as well. So I think in South Africa, we are praying, hoping, manifesting, whatever your denomination is, that by 2024 or within the year 2024, it will be decriminalized. So sex work was a very big discussion. I also think the first episode on parenting and education, because people are used to understanding sex and how to parent when it comes to sex in a certain way. But we tried to be really, really broad in the types of conversations we had in our first episode. So we brought in an intersex activist who's also intersex, Ntabise Mokwena, and they spoke about what to do when you realize you have an intersex kid. Like, people don't know this shit,
Yeah,
you know?
don't learn it in mom school and dad school.
In
and parent
Allo,
school.
you don't learn
Yeah.
about it, right? And so we try to be as layered and as complex in how to parent and how to understand certain things, and how to educate not only yourself, but also those that you're around in that episode. And I think that episode also brought out a lot of feedback. But overall, every episode had something that people had to say about it
100%.
and write about. So
Yeah, I can imagine. So I think we're going to jump into some of our topics. We did have an icebreaker. I was going to ask you guys which TV shows you've been watching. I know you touched on Devil's Dorp and on Rosemary's Hit List. I was actually watching Rosemary's Hit List last night.
how bizarre is that?
It is so bizarre, but it's actually, and maybe it might sound a bit crazy to say, but it was so insightful, I think, to watch a female serial killer. Like, I really haven't seen anything like that, let alone a South African one that was then in the police force. Like, that was really incredible journalism.
I knew nothing about this, so adding it to the watch list.
Yeah. I added it to my watch list literally before it
came out.
Before it even came out. But
Yeah.
what have you been watching?
I've been doing a range. I think everyone's been watching The Ultimatum, Queer Love. Interesting. Like, I think I was so excited for it to come out. I thought when they said queer, it was going to be a lot more diverse. Like, I thought that there was going to be, like, you know, all sorts. But I think that I'm really, like, as a starter, it was cool. I think the personalities, there was a lot of personality. There was a lot of representation of a lot of, like, toxic habits and things that exist. And I think a lot of the people on the show, what I realized, I was like, you know, I'm judging these people. Like, I'm saying, oh my gosh, that's so toxic, or this person is shutting down, this person is so dismissive. But I remember reading something after the fact where people were like, when you are in front of the camera and your life is playing out real time and you're watching it back, it's like a mirror. Like, you never saw like all of those parts of yourself, or you never actually knew. Like, some of these people actually are genuinely like, I never knew I was toxic. I never knew I responded, or I was so dismissive, or I shut down. And I was like, you know, that's actually a really human experience. Like, because I think, I'm sure if everyone recorded every second of my life, there would be a lot of stuff that I don't even know I did. So I think that was an interesting reflection after watching that. But
I agree. But I also wish that they had a queer host. Like, I don't understand why there was a straight woman, because she didn't add anything to it. And even with the straight version of it, that host, it was Nick Lachey and them, but they at least added there was something that they added personality or like some experience that they could add to the whole thing. She didn't add, she added zero. Like, it was really
she
boring.
didn't even like seem like she knew the show. Like,
No, she was just sitting there like,
hey,
I'll see you next week. And then, like, triple hyphenated surname. It's like, it's really...
She was really in the background.
She was really in the background.
The one thing actually that I do remember in that show that I thought was a bit crazy, and maybe I just like live under a rock or haven't been watching TV, but the amount of sex that they showed on it.
Yo, it was like my brother.
Exactly. Exactly. Especially considering that these are like, it was a reality show. They're not acting out. You know, it's not, you're not watching 50 Shades of Grey. You're watching a reality show, and like, you know, I always wonder, obviously for these people, you obviously do sign contracts and things like that, but I'm just like, the level of exposure, like, you can see in the thing when someone's giving someone head, like, you can see. They even play the moans, actually. They actually even play the moans.
And then it said, furtive moaning. The subtitle, I was like, damn, girl.
okay, you get into it.
For interest's sake, you mentioned how you were hoping for a bigger representation. So was I. But I thought that they were all just like lesbians. But then afterwards, I also read up on some of the literature, and they were saying that there are actually a couple of non-binary people in there, but it was never discussed or handled by production in terms of like, okay, so everyone must introduce themselves with their pronouns or whatever it may be. So I think maybe for next time, there's something that they can rather like structure it so that people know, the viewers know ahead of time. Okay, these are the queer folks, these are their pronouns. Let's all like
especially
work
to a
towards
mainstream audience.
Yes, especially to a mainstream audience. They're not really aware of these things. So for next time, maybe they can do that.
100%.
But I fucking love that show, man.
Nah,
It gave me
guilty
all the
pleasure.
feels, bruh.
Guilty pleasure. I have no shame. It was amazing.
So yeah, I think even just talking about queer love, I think there's a lot of marginalized groups and things that need to be spotlighted when it comes to sex and sexual health. I think the queer community is just one of them. Mbali, I know for you, do you have any other communities that you think?
I think definitely the disabled community, big one. I think different racial communities just respond to sex differently. So I don't think that necessarily there's one group that we have to speak about, but I think that it's good to acknowledge where each group is at or what limitations or experiences they all have, you know.
And how they link and how like sex is just all linked in general. It doesn't have to be this thing of like queer sex, this is the definition. Straight sex, this is the definition. People with disability sex, this is the definition. We really can look at finding ways of linking them all and bridging them all together, whether it's educational or even in the physical act of it. It's not that much different. Sex is pleasure.
Yes.
100%. That is really what it is about.
But I think that's important to note because I don't think it's ever been taught that way to me. So like that's something I had to go out of my way to learn. Like that's not something that I thought of when I thought of sex originally. And I think that my understanding and meaning that I link towards sex has changed so much, even in the past 2 years, in the past 3 years, like constantly at different stages, it's changing. And I think it's really cool for us to acknowledge that. I don't know how it's been for you guys. If you've had like a fluid understanding of sex or throughout your life, has it meant the same thing or been the same thing to you?
Definitely not. It's always changed.
Yeah.
Like in the beginning, especially with what you see on TV and whatever, it's like, ooh, okay, I need to know what I'm doing. Like, I need to suck that dick a certain way. I need to do all of these things. I need to keep him, at that time, because I was very straight. I have to keep him, engaged with me so that he doesn't go anywhere else, so that I'm the baddie in the bedroom, right? That was always my way of seeing it. I mean, I'm still the baddie in the bedroom, but that time it was more about, I'm gonna cater to you. Like, I'm gonna cater to this motherfucker. Exactly. Very performative. In the same breath, performance is important in the bedroom, but you got to know the difference. Am I now performing outside of my own pleasure realm for someone else? Or am I performing for both of us? Which I think is also important. Performance is not bad.
Yeah,
I think
it's a beautiful intention. It's that level of intention. What is the reason for this? How safe do I feel doing this? Is it my vibe?
Exactly.
Is it my vibe?
And right now, I think, like, so as you said, like, it's just changed. It used to be all about the dude, all about the dick. And then it just started to be like, well, actually, I also want something. And then you just grow and grow and grow until you get to this point where you're just like, sex is about pleasure. If you can't please me, you can try again, maybe one more time, maybe 2 more times. If you still can't please me, okay, deuces.
Yeah, twice was enough.
Yeah, here's 2 fingers. You didn't even contribute any. But yeah, I think for me, I've definitely had the kind of cookie cutter sanitized experience of like sexual education. I think obviously like in Alo, especially one thing that I'm noticing now as I'm older and moving into more like queer spaces and being more bisexual, I guess that's what it is. But yeah, the lack of those conversations, even a dental dam, I think I found out about when I was like 21. Like that was not something that, we learned about in school, which I think is like, it's definitely unfair. But I think that noting that disservice has been done, I think I was saying to Mbali in an earlier conversation that it's very important that as an adult and as a person who's having sex, you take it on as any other responsibility. It's like if you're going outside during the cold, wear a jacket. If you're going outside when it's raining, take an umbrella. Like, there is a level of responsibility that I think is important to take on as a person who's having sex. Like if you want to do this fun, adult, pleasurable thing, which it is, like you also kind of have a responsibility just to take the precautions. And I promise you that's only going to make it more fun.
And regardless of your gender, I think for a lot of especially straight people, and I speak for who I used to be in the past as well, if someone is like calling me over or we want to have sex or whatever, I rock up without no condom. Like, I mean, I'm assuming you have the condom. And I think that is a type of thing that we need to move past. If I'm coming to you, I'm better make sure that we have condoms, because it doesn't matter what your gender is, whether you're the woman, the man, the non-binary, it doesn't make sense. I mean, it doesn't matter. Carry your condoms and make sure that you put your protection first.
That's the thing. Yeah, my mom, like, as soon as she found out that I was the person that was having sex, she was like, okay, girl, like, I'm not going to shame you or whatever, but she was like, one standard practice is you must always carry condoms. And I remember in the beginning, it was always like a joke. Like my friends, whenever they see me at the bar, like they're asking for lip gloss and they see condoms in my bag. And it's like, oh my gosh, like, Mbali, like, what's your plans and your ambitions for the night? So it's like, it's not an ambition or I'm not like chasing anything. But if the possibility or if it occurs, I need to be protecting myself. And I need to put myself first because now they'll tell you there's no condoms in the room and we're all looking at each other. And I'm like, no, don't worry, I got you. Like, you know, like I think it's very important for us to start like taking ownership of our own sexuality and our sexual experiences, like, because I don't think it was ever given to us. Like you said, it's always about the dick, about the dude. Like it's so exciting for it to be something that I'm engaging in, willingly and in a way that prioritizes me as well. So.
Exactly. Because if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So your friend's asking you what's your plans for the night. Girl, I just got condoms. I'm staying ready just in case.
Just in case.
You have a power bank. I have condoms.
Yeah, like
we sorted.
We're ready for the
night. So yeah, I think also just going on to Mbali, you touched on a bit of like speaking about sexual shame. I think that also just exactly what you said, like it happens to people who are maybe just free. They get labeled as promiscuous. People that are less active get labeled as prudes. But it's like trying to change that narrative. And I think, Kim, you definitely like have been doing the work in terms of that. But changing the narrative to dismiss some of the shame, but not even just to get it to objectivity. I think we really want to get people to look at sex from a different perspective. And I would ask you, like, how do you think we could move away from a shaming or shameful community?
That's a tough question. Because the shame comes from somewhere, right? The shame comes from our parents, many of our parents, not all of our parents. I mean, you seem to have had a mom who is very open, you know, but she works in the medical field as well, the sexual medical field. So that would make sense, right? But I think like it's about understanding where the shame comes from and what communities they come from. A lot of our parents shame us and say that you're going to be disowned if you have premarital sex. Our pastors tell us that you're going to go to hell if you have premarital sex or if you come out as gay or trans or whatever it may be. Our politicians try to take away our rights, try to take away free condoms, try to take away the things that we need, right? Our teachers tell us, I had a teacher, I also say this in Sex and Pleasure, but I had a teacher who when I was 14 told me that if I use a public restroom, I can get an STI from sitting on the toilet seat, right? And she made it this shameful thing. She made STIs to be such a bad thing that made me never want to get tested when I eventually became sexually active or became partaking in the sex and the pleasure. You understand what I'm saying? So it's about understanding where the shame comes from and then trying to reframe that. And it's sad. It's so sad. Imagine a world where we were raised where those same people continue to talk to us about sex, but the way that they speak to us about it is more informative and it gives us the tools to make our own decisions without that shame. Because I feel like people say things like, oh, we don't talk about sex enough in our communities. We need to have more of these conversations. We need to do more of this. We don't talk about sex. We don't talk about sex. But what I just told you really shows that that's a lie. We do talk about sex. It's in every part of our livelihoods and where we're at. But it's the how. How are we talking about sex? How are we as parents reinforcing the shitty politics about sex that we got when we were kids into our current kids? You know, how are the places or the TV shows that we allow our kids to watch also giving them tons of shame when it comes to sex and pleasure or just understanding their bodies? It doesn't even have to be about sex. So the question you're asking me is very hard to answer because for me it was about experiencing all the negative shame talk. I had to go through all of that to start to unlearn it and to actively take on that responsibility to unlearn it. So I just hope for one day we can live in a society where when you're born, no one shames you about your questions that you have and the type of experiences that you want about your sexual orientation, what have you.
And I think, starting to have constructive conversations so much earlier. Like I think in the show I was watching last night, and someone made a comment of like, my children are 18 and 21 and I'm still not having that conversation because if I don't have the conversation, then it's not real. Like if they're not coming to me about sex, then maybe they're not having it. But I just think that it's so much like it's such a negative way to think of it, because it's like, if you teach them, like you said, like any other thing that you're teaching them in life, like you're learning to walk, you're learning not to talk to strangers, you should be learning those things about consent. You should be learning those things about, like, when granny's asking to kiss you on the cheek and you don't want to, you can say no, like, and that's okay. Like, you don't have to hug auntie every single time if they're making you uncomfortable. And I think, like, introducing those conversations and normalizing it instead of making it a taboo. Like, if you're starting early, the questions come earlier, the conversations come earlier, and it can be an honest and positive conversation. Like, we don't all have the answers. And I think also that's important to, like, note. Like, sometimes, especially when I was, like, questioning my sexuality and starting to have those questions, like, I knew I could go to my mom because my mom is just open like that. But she also was honest about, like, girl, I'm not a queer person. I haven't done that research, but like, let's do it together. Like, what are your questions? Let's look, and she plugged me into so many valuable resources that I use today, that I'm engaging today. And I'm like, let's be honest, like, parents don't know everything. Like, even as a friend, like, I think peer support and peer learning is like where I get the most information about sex. Like, as a start, like, that's where I started to have the conversations. Obviously now it's more, but like, we also, like, as friends, we have to also say, girl, I don't know. Like, when you're asking me, I don't know, I'm having this experience or this weird thing's happening to my body, like, let's also say, I don't know. And then, like, we can have honest and constructive conversations. But I think it's important that we talk. And like, saying I don't know is a part of the conversation, because then let's learn, like, let's, like, spread out,
It's
as
Google
opposed
together.
to, like, let's not talk about it so that it's not happening, or like our parents thinking, like, if we don't talk about it, it's not real. Like, I think it just opens up the floor for so many more negative experiences. And also, like, on the flip side, like, we always have to bring the context to South Africa. Like, so many violent and bad things do happen. And if we're not talking about sex in general, when the negative thing happens, how do I bring it up?
Exactly.
And how do I not have shame about that element when there's shame around sex in general?
Exactly.
So yeah, I think it's so nuanced, and there's so many different, like, elements, but like, a conversation just needs to be a conversation, and the starting point for learning, for sharing, for anything.
I think also in the sex conversation, there's a lot of this, like, ignorance is bliss narrative. So it comes from that aspect about, like, not talking about maybe your kids having it or whatever. But then there's also the aspect of, I think, especially with, like, STDs and STIs, where it's like, if I just don't get tested, then I don't know that I have it, so then I don't have it. You see? And then that I think also can obviously be very, like, harmful, because it doesn't help us have any healthier sex as a society.
Yes.
You know? And I think, Kim, maybe you can also speak to this, like, speak to the STIs and the STDs, and maybe from your perspective, what you're seeing commonly, like, amongst young people.
Yeah. Well, I'm seeing, as you said, I mean, again, I'm not a doctor or a clinician, so I don't want to speak from that perspective. But some of the things that you can see here is, again, that attitude of, like, ignorance is bliss. If I don't have a symptom, or if I choose not to see a change in my body, even though I knew I had unprotected sex a couple of weeks ago and something's happening, then I can just move on with my life. And I don't have to really care about it, right? And everyone's just talking about, like, raw dogging and enjoying each other. And I mean, I can also, like, affirm that. Like, when I was younger, I was also one of the people saying, I don't really like condoms. I'm using it, but I don't really like it because I love that feeling of skin to skin. Okay, girl, you can like the feeling of skin to skin, but that is not something that is responsible for anybody involved, because the person you're having sex with, they're having sex with other people. You're having sex with other people. Let's, like, respect each other's let's respect each other's health, so that we can actually enjoy the pleasure that comes with it, regardless of whether you're wearing a condom, right? And I think when we as young people, when people share with each other and they say to each other, I don't like wearing condoms. Someone else now, they've never even tried a condom, but they're just going to go out there and be like, condoms, it's not for me. The next thing, your friend tells another friend, condoms ain't for me. Meantime, they've never even tried all the condoms out there. I had sex recently with someone using the Trojan, like a Trojan packet. I'd never used Trojan before. But he came around and both of us had Trojan. I was in New York, so I had to buy my own condoms. And it was actually really nice. It didn't feel any different to me at all. So there are different types of condoms that you can try. Try the Featherlight from Durex. Try that gold Trojan pack. Try different ones that bring you as close to the skin feeling. You don't have to remove pleasure just because you don't want to wear a condom. There are ways of protecting each other. But there was also a conversation that we had earlier on where you were like, about a friend of yours or someone that you know who is a high risk. Because do you want to tell the story? Let's talk about that.
Sure. So I was listening to a podcast this morning, and this person was just noting how they are very sexually free and they enjoy having sex without condoms. And what they do though, they said that comes with a lot more communication. So it's basically creating for yourself a safe experience around you, communicating with all your partners and getting tested. If you know that this is something, I enjoy the freedom of it and I enjoy the feeling of this, then that's what you have to do to be able to access that. So yeah, this person is bisexual. They communicate to both of their partners, or to all kinds of their partners, that, you know, like if you want to get under the sheets this week, I'm having a busy week. Like my schedule's booked
Schedule's
up. Schedule's packed. So just know that you are at high risk. If the person still then, is happy to have sex without a condom, that's great. They're informed and had the option to say yes or no based on information that they were given beforehand. So I think also, again, a little bit into the conversation about consent and using condoms and things like that, I think it can be very helpful to have those conversations a little bit before, because there's a part in a time during like sex or even just the whole foreplay of it where you just get lizard brain. Like you're human, your desire takes over. Like right now, you're not going to be like, so
what you said
in
about that.
in all your past relationships. Like that's not going to happen because that's not what you're thinking, and you shouldn't ever, I think, shame yourself for that. Because again, it's desire. That's human. That's why you're doing it, because it's fun.
Lizard brain is a real thing. I mean, I've been working in this space for 10 years. Sometimes I'm sitting across from someone and damn, it's an ocean down here. Ocean gate.
Yes.
Too soon.
Too soon.
It's literal pussy implosion. And I'm like,
it's going down now.
I really want this person. Like it's hot. And I'm saying to myself, yo. I say to myself, I've got my condom in my bag. Like I got it, And you, as you said, you get lizard brain. Like people say things for people with dicks. Oh yeah, this dude is just thinking with his dick. Bitch, I also have a dick.
Yeah.
I be thinking with my clit. It's pulsating. And I want something specific right now. And I have something might happen where I don't,
think about everything.
Think about
every
everything
step.
in that moment.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it is a natural thing. But as you said, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So make sure that you still have your things in your bag. Make sure that you explain this to this person. Look, I've been high risk and I don't use condoms. In that way, everyone is informed, and the informed consent can happen. Okay, well, you don't want to use condoms. Do I actually want to meet up with this person now? Because then you can make that decision informed without having lizard brain. But if, don't tell me that when you've already lubricated me. Like, it's also...
Be fair. Let's just all be fair.
Yeah, let's be fair. Tell me about this prior to me actually arriving. Otherwise, you've lubricated me, guys.
Yeah.
And then something needs to go inside.
Next step. But there's also a greater conversation, again, about high risk and different kinds of risks. Mbali, if you feel comfortable to maybe, give some body to that conversation about different risks associated in having sex.
I think for me, it's been really complicated because like my orientation to sex as a person is just different. So I'm only going to speak from my personal experience because I feel like that's the best way to go from. I think that for me, like sex has been so linked to safety just because my initial sexual experiences weren't safe. And that's a whole different type of risk. So I know most times we're thinking about sex, it's like this sexual health risks and the risks of, and this is still closely linked, but I think the feeling of safety and security as a person mentally when you're having sex is so important to me. And for me, like that's like everyone has like their main pillar when it comes to safety and risk and what are you willing to lose or what are you willing to give, when it comes to sex. And for my sexual experiences, safety is key. Like for me, if I don't have a partner that I think values my safety, values experiences that I've had that are negative and can hinder my sexual experiences, then if that person doesn't care about that, then they don't care about me and they don't deserve to share that part of me or experience me in that way. So I think it's also like important to think about how, like what will make you feel better in any sexual experience. So I think, yes, if you know that you have condoms, if you have protection that is going to protect you from the healthcare risks, that's important. But for me, it's like, I have to put my emotional condom on. Is this person safe? Do they care about my heart? Do they care about if I'm getting overwhelmed, if I'm stressed out, if something triggers me, do they have the capacity to share in that with me, to be present, to hold space for me? I think that's really important. And it's like rarely dictated the way in which I navigate sex. But I think that that's also, again, those experiences are why I'm always like ready, why I always have something in my bag. Because I'm like, things happen and things like sometimes are out of your control. Sometimes you're in a situation that's not grand. But if you can put as many, I don't know, not barriers, but pillars in place to make yourself as safe as you possibly can be, I think that that's the most important thing. Because psychological damage, all of like that emotional damage, like it's harder than we think, and it's not so much spoken about. Like we're always speaking about the positive aspects, and I think that the positive is so good. And like I'm so happy that I have the like experiences now that I can say that, and sex is pleasurable, it is fun, it is something that can make you feel so fulfilled and loved. But sometimes it's not, and I think it's good to weigh up all of those experiences and all of those risks as well.
So what is your checklist? Because you say like you can have the sexual health one, you know, like condoms, blah, blah, blah. But what is your emotional or spiritual checklist to make sure that you feel safe?
Yeah. I think that in the beginning, I didn't want to, because I think once you have a sexual trauma, you don't want to make yourself that experience and you don't want to hold it always. So at the beginning, I was always trying to be sexy and free and young. And I'm like, yeah, like I'm just going to do this thing and it's going to be fun. And then I realized, no, like this thing really affects me. So even in trying to be sexy, young and free, sometimes it was triggering because I wasn't presencing something that was very, very real to me and very, very important. So I think my checklist now is this a person that I can even share my story with or share what triggers me, share what's happened to me? If not, then already the whole thing's off the table. Because if I don't feel safe to just talk to you about it in general, like I've had this experience, so I always like throw in something light. So GPV, hey? You just see on
First
the day,
date questions.
GPV, hey? And then you see what they say.
Let your condom fall out of the bag. Oh, for later. See if they go, or if they go,
yeah. So I just I throw in a few things, see how is this person thinking about things and how do they think about sexual safety in general. So and then I just think presencing the fact that like, hey, I've had this weird thing happen to me, and sometimes I react this way. I share possibilities of what could happen, and then seeing how they respond to that. Because sometimes, you know, you do want sex to be freaky and wild, and you don't want to deal with somebody who might start crying in the middle of it, and that's fair. Like I'm sharing that with you so that you know that that could happen. So I think it's just being honest about where I'm at. Like I think there's no specific checklist. It's sort of like speaking through things and sharing, like how, as if like the same example, if I was somebody who was like sexually free and doing high risk activity, I would share that. So I'm like, I'm somebody who, you know, is a bit more sensitive when it comes to this realm, and I have certain triggers. So I think it's important for me to share that with my partner. So also like, you don't like think that you've done something wrong or like, you know, I think it's just important to share where you're at mentally, like spiritually. I think that that's a big element for me of like the mental part takes up a lot of my brain space when I'm thinking about how I orientate myself towards sex.
So Kim, I was going to ask you, Mbali was speaking about sex, and also I think a little bit about making your space safe, like the space that you have sex in, a safe one. Is there such thing as 100% safe sex?
That's why nowadays, especially people like SRHR, sexual and reproductive health and rights advocates, they speak about safer sex. No sex is safe. Even a condom cannot protect you from absolutely everything. I mean, if you look at HPV, so a condom, I think, if used properly, can protect you against like 70%, even if you do use a condom. And so there is no such thing as 100% safe sex. Like you will not get pregnant, you will not get an STI or some bacteria or whatever. There is no such thing. However, you can put the elements or your own checklist in place to ensure that you feel the safest that you possibly can in any given situation. I mean, people think that finger fucking is maybe 100% safe. But if you don't wash your hands, clean under your nails,
you're going to make some
or
great
if you fuck someone after just eating some spicy fucking KFC, you can hurt someone. It is not safe. It can cause other types of things, and weird yeasty stuff is going on in your body. And so, no, there is no such thing as 100% safe sex. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't put the elements in place. The ergonomics.
Make the things to be done.
100%. I think also safe sex there's a conversation, I think, about actual tools like the contraceptives that you would use or whatever. But I think that again, there's the mental aspect of it where it's like your mind frame even in that situation, and how safe is that? Like I'm like, if you maybe like had a mental breakdown and then you go out that evening, that's all going to affect the way you have sex that evening, you know, or how you woke up this morning, or all of those things. And I think also for young people, there's I guess an argument for substance abuse, or even just substance use. It doesn't necessarily have to be abuse, but drug users or alcohol users, I think, would obviously be at higher risk for that. You know, if you're drinking more again in the evening, that's going to even change your, what is the word? Is it your inhibition? That alcohol lowers your inhibition. So again, you're just more likely to say yes to things that you wouldn't have otherwise said. And again, that's not a bad thing, but you should just know that like a bit later, I'm not going to be my 100% myself, you know? So rather make the decisions now. And I think, Mbali, I remember we were in an English class and one of our like English teachers first taught us, she was gearing us up for a very serious, there was like a big rugby weekend. If you guys know Hilton and Michael House, there's major rugby weekends that happen there. And there's this big after party that happens for the high schoolers called Red Black. So our school was like super conservative. So they're speaking to us about this party where like we're going to drink and like people, there's just, you know,
things are
people,
gonna happen,
bad things are going to be happen. People's stomachs are going to get pumped. You're going to kiss boys. It's going to be horrible. So our teacher gives us a lecture before the party, and she says to us, you know, it's actually going to serve you to make a lot of your party decisions before you go to the party. She was like, no one's saying don't drink, no one's saying don't do whatever, but she's like, when you think of yourself in that space and in that party, even when you're getting ready, think like, okay, you kind of want to have 2 drinks, or you want to have 3, or you want to be at this level. Like when you see yourself at 1 o'clock, you know, in the morning in that party, how do you look?
This is how you want to look.
How are you? Are you dancing with your friends? Are you know, getting your stomach pumped?
That's a very smart teacher.
Right?
Because you can take that tool into the rest of your life. I still use
in
that.
any framework.
In any framework, you can think, okay, where does my comfortability lie? But I want to come back to something you just mentioned about, if you just had a mental health break and you go out that night, then, you know, in order to numb yourself even more or whatever, that's going to affect the way that you have sex and the type of decisions that you make. We interviewed for Sex and Pleasure a doctor called Dr. Ramlakan. And okay, he was speaking about other stuff, but I feel like we can use that here as well. He said that you need to be able to notice any changes in your body, notice the things that happen in your body in order to make certain decisions, right? And I feel like if we as people can acknowledge where we're at mentally, spiritually, emotionally, that will tell us what type of mental framework we're going to be in terms of bringing someone else into our sexual space, or going out and drinking a ton, or trying to understand like what type of pleasure can I actually get out of this experience if this is where I'm at in a kind of like self-destructive space. Is this going to be good for me as well? But then again, linked to that is when you're in a mental space like that, you can't actually make decisions that are 100% safe to yourself. So it's this very difficult dance that you essentially do. I mean, back in the day when I was very young or younger and I was just like having sex, I realized one day I was dating someone. So I wasn't, you know, I was done with my first hoe phase in my life. So I was dating this person, and it was the first time that we had sober sex. And everything felt so weird because usually we'd lubricate ourselves, you know, have some drinks,
so
and then be like, let's go home. And then it's very fluid because your body all of a sudden, I can understand you. I don't have to try and read you actually. I can just read what's happening because we're inebriated, right? And so then I think I was like 22 or something. It was the first time that I had, it wasn't even intentional, but I had sober sex. And it felt weird. We were kind of like, okay. Well, this is weird. And we actually had to have a discussion about that, about how different it felt, but how we also want to kind of explore that understanding because that realm, it just felt so different. Even nowadays, I mean, now I don't drink that much anymore because when you're over 30s, guys, the acid reflux is real. We can't drink anymore. What, you're in your 20s? 24? 25? Yeah, guys. 24. Give it 5 years. You're going to start having one sip of mimosa and be like, it's not great. So I can't drink that much anymore anyway because my health, you know, my body.
Even if you wanted to.
I've recognized, exactly.
Yes.
I've recognized the change that I need to, you know, take care of, right? where was I now? Shit, I'm rambling.
You were speaking about your having the sober sex experience.
Yeah, and now I'm having
now.
way more. Now I'm having way more sober sex experiences in my life, and I'm enjoying it. And I'm actually like leaning into it and understanding that I need to listen to myself and my desires, not necessarily what the drink is telling me to desire or what the drugs is telling me to desire. Now I decide what I desire. Okay, cool. And if I go on a date with someone and I had 100%, I was like, we're going to fuck tonight, and I don't fuck with what you're saying, like the checklist you said, like I throw out some little tests for you and you fail. You fail everyone, dismally.
Get out of here.
Then I can decide, okay, drink my last drink and I leave, whatever it may be. So
yeah,
I think sex changes as you get older and your understanding of it. And right now, I don't need sex anymore, guys. Like if you're not good, it's not gonna happen.
I get that. I think also just touching on what you said is taking off a lot of limitations on sex. And again, as young people, not necessarily that there's limitations, but I think there's just ways in which we've been socialized that now make that almost all of our sexual experiences. So it's like what you're saying about drinking. Like I feel like for a lot of young people, like you probably have had more drunk sex than sober sex, or even if that's only been like after one drink, But it's like it's definitely been socialized to be that way. And I would even say again, like with sex and pleasure, like even in the conversation that we're having about sex, like not everything we're speaking about is like all like penetrative, No. Even it's like the foreplay in that, and like even like some days you want to have sex, or actually not that you want to have sex, but you want to be touched. So maybe you just want some cuddles and some kisses, and really that's where you want to end. But that experience could be very equally sexual to you.
Exactly.
And in you guys' docuseries, you did have I think she's not an African doctor. She's a doctor who's African.
Dr. Mpume Zenda?
I think so, and she was on the Age episode.
Oh, Dr. Sindiwe Magona.
Yes.
Yeah, she's an author. That's how she got it.
Oh, she's an author.
She's awesome, yeah.
Amazing. So she was saying again how for her, sex starts when the person walks in the room. Like when they walk past you and you smell the cologne and you're like, oh my gosh. Or, they buy you a drink or they look you. Exactly. It's all this. Yeah, it's all of the stuff that happens before. And even again, she was saying that you sometimes take for granted that women make their decisions in the bedroom. Like that's the moment that she's decided. But actually no. When she saw, if she got the ick or didn't get the ick, that's what this whole thing is about,
Yeah.
If you were a weirdo at the table or if you weren't, that's actually where those decisions were being made. And I think that that's true for a lot of people.
Again, like what is your definition of sex, right? Like when you use the term foreplay, like a lot of people are saying like, but foreplay is also sex, especially when you're a queer person. Like for me, before, people would tell me that sex is penis in the vagina. And that was or any form of penetration, specifically the penis penetration. That is when sex starts. So when I was younger, I'd be like, okay, I'm a do everything but. You can put it everywhere,
except
but in the vagina, because then I'm not a virgin anymore. Like, and I'm going to church. I can't. I'm a church girl, guys.
Why would I do that?
You can put it here. You can put it here. You can put it here, but don't put it here.
Whoa,
I'm still a virgin, right? But then, like, as you grow older, my definition of it has expanded.
Yeah.
As you said, sometimes it can be as sexual just looking at each other. And you feel this building, and you're not really sure where it's coming from, but it's your brains interacting with one another. Or a cuddle can be a sex. Sex cannot be defined by a single definition. It cannot be defined. Sex is what you make of it. And I find it very interesting. It's very similar to so I'm in a partnership now. I'm very serious. Whatever that may mean. But one thing that we have realized in our relationship that was funny in the beginning was sometimes I'd be like, right after sex, I'm like, oh, wow, we just made love. Like I came and I saw stars. That was love making. And I'd look at them and they'd be like, huh? Like to them, in this specific context, it was still great, but they didn't define it as like love making. But that was what I needed in that moment, and that's what I got in that moment. The next time we'd fuck, they'd be like, whoa, baby, whoa, now we made love. And then I'm like, what? Like to me, we just had beautiful sex. I didn't see it as love making. It's the same way with sex. Like we can be cuddling, and in my mind, I'm like, damn, bro. We fucked. That was my definition of sex. And the person who was being cuddled is like, huh? What? I didn't even touch you.
I was actually watching the movie.
Yeah. So we have different understandings of sex, of lovemaking. It's the same thing. It's going to be different. So yeah, I think it's an interesting type of concept actually to think about,
Yeah.
because then one party will be saying, oh yeah, we had sex, and another person is like, no guys, like we held hands and I gave them a hand job. Is that sex? So it's very interesting how there's a big scale for this conversation to happen as well as to how do we define sex and who has the right to define it.
I was going to say again, we were having a conversation earlier about like disclosure. And I think that maybe again, even like in sex, it's that like, there's no need to necessarily disclose. Like that's between the two people that were in the bedroom. You know, you can tell someone like, yeah, I took someone home last night. Like they don't necessarily need to know
what happened,
the intricacies of that. And yeah, I think that disclosure should be up to you. And I was saying that also, like as I become more part of the queer community and like solidify myself like as a proper bisexual person. Like that's proper.
We're going to come back to that conversation because I actually want to find out why you said like that. Let's continue.
So yeah, coming into that, I've realized that there's a lot more, I think, yeah, there's just people that have sex in a different way to what we were taught. So it's not traditional methods of sex happening, not traditional bodies happening, whatever. And I think that it's been really nice to, again, have that level of privacy where it's like in the bedroom, it's only me and you that are speaking about this, or me and you talking about what you like and what I like. And I think there's still a playful way that you can do that in the bedroom. I think there's still room to playfully say no, to playfully ask someone something, you know. I mean, seriously still, but like, you know, there's still humor and there's still questions and there's still ongoing discourse, you know. It's not just like banging the whole time.
Also, babe, like if you self-identify as being queer, you don't have to solidify yourself in any community. I think, I mean, coming from a queer person, I can't speak for everyone else, but I'm a queer person, and something that I've realized, especially with some of my friends who are straight, is they will, you know, be swiping left and right also on women or on all genders, whatever is now on whatever dating app they're on. And they're like, yeah, but I don't really see myself as queer because I haven't like had the physical experience or the physical manifestation of something. And I'm like, well, when you were quote unquote straight and you were a virgin, you 100% saw yourself as straight. And you were like, okay, I'm straight. But you had no physical experience. You are queer once you accept yourself to be queer. You understand what I'm saying? You don't need to up your numbers or, oh, fuck, I fucked 20 dudes. Now I need to fuck 10 non-binaries and 10 women.
And now
you know, and then I'm going to be the best bisexual, whatever queer that exists. To me personally, that's not, that's a very sad way, because now did you fill in your form by the queer academy? Did you
get your approval? No, but I literally have such a similar, or I had such a similar orientation towards similar orientation towards it as well, because I also had that whole thing, like especially like in university when I was like, okay, I'm feeling like this, whatever. Then I'd be like, okay, I'm bi. And then they'd be like, oh, but like the track record is saying otherwise. Like it's men. And then one girl here and there. And I'm like, but like after a while, I'm like, it doesn't matter, because I'm open to all of that experience. And that's how I see myself and that's how I identify. And so it doesn't matter. Because again, I'm also not somebody who is going to have lots of sex with lots of people. So I was never going to get the verification. If there was a committee, I was never going to get that verification anyway. So I think that it is just a way of being and the way you see yourself. Like that's why I love queer rather than any other identifier. Like I don't want to say I'm like this. Like I think queer is such a beautiful way to say it, because it's you are who you are and what you are, and you don't owe it to anyone to define like my queerness is like this, and I do two guys and then one non-binary person and one, you know, woman. Like it's what you want and what you make it. And like I think in like even your like, it's in how we're saying like terming sex and what sex means to you. It's what it means to you, and your sex and my sex might be different. Same as your queer and my queer might be different, which is what I think is so beautiful about it, because this whole boxing of things and it must be like this and like that. I feel like that's why we have all these problems with sex, is because everyone made it this thing. Like, and it has to be exactly like this, like this, like this. So then when other things are happening, you don't think you're having sex, but you are, but you feel weird. Like, when you let it all go.
I think it's more about finding community. So when I came out, I was 20. Well, I never came out. I just started living my life. But let me use the term came out for simplicity. When I came out, I was 21. And I realized then how straight or heteronormative all my friends were and the communities that I was in. So all of the communities were so straight, even in their way of thinking, that I didn't really know where to find. At the time, I was looking for lesbians, because what did I know? So I was like, where can I find lesbians? I had to actually go and look and talk to those token lesbians that I knew
Yeah.
to be like, where do you hang out? Like, I need to find communities, not necessarily to fuck people. That's not really what it is about. I just want to find other people
Validate your
that I can relate
experience.
to at that time. And so, I just want to affirm you in terms of if you need to find community, that's a completely different thing. But this whole thing, like my best friend, I'm not going to name her, but she's also going through something similar to you. It's like, she's really like into some woman, but she's also like, but I can't call myself queer and I feel like an imposter. I also felt like an imposter. And the imposter syndrome will go away with time as you just start to be more comfortable in your queerness. Like, yeah.
I think for me, I've always just like, I think I really do actually probably relate more to the term queer than anything else. Because for me, it's always been a case of like, I like what I like. I think bisexuality is I probably have been hanging around a lot of straight people. That's probably my issue right now. Love you guys. But yeah, I think that's what it is. I was saying to Mbali, or something that I think I've appreciated in the queer community is like actually coming to terms with rejection and even bringing rejection into the conversation about sex. Because I think that it's part of it. Someone can say yes, someone can say no. But what I want to shed light on specifically with the queer community is just because everyone's different, you know. You might be interested to certain like fashion styles. You might not like people who wear like straight, like it's things like that. I think with the queer community, it might also be some people are like even attracted to energies. Like there's all sorts of different things. So you could meet someone who's queer and not necessarily be compatible. The same way you meet someone who's straight and you're not compatible. But I think again, like whoever's on the receiving end of rejection, I think there needs to be a new conversation to say like rejection is part of this experience. You know, for as many yeses you get, you know, you got to get some no's. You know, there's someone who can tick all the boxes for you, but then they're not interested, and you have to be like, cool,
that's
like
fine.
that's really fun, and people are allowed to have choices about those kinds of things.
I recently had an experience like that. Like, well, I was so into this person. It doesn't happen a lot, guys. But I was so into her. And like, I just like got rejected. And I had heartbreak for the first time in a very, very long time in my life. Like being rejected, guys, is not easy. But again, you got to take it into your stride. And that doesn't necessarily have to mean the end of your friendship or the end of your relationship. Rejection happens even within serious relationships or partnerships. My partner that I live with now, we reject each other all the time. But like, you know, and that's just part of, okay, cool. You don't want me to touch you like that? Cool, let's just cuddle. Let's regroup, guys. Let's regroup.
Let's keep it going.
You can always, relationships are fluid and the nature of that relationship can change because of its fluidity. So if someone rejects me now, cool, let's regroup and figure out a way to move forward together.
Positively.
Instead of it being this thing where I was now rejected and now for the rest of my life I must live with this rejection.
Yeah, this anger.
It was just a regroup, guys.
100%. I think also for me, like it's always going to sound egotistical, but I'm like, especially making the move from dating, just dating men and then like starting to date more women. Men, like I would say, like the success rate is like 99.9%. Like it's pretty easy. You could just go stand at a bar and then and
it's not even about you.
Yeah, it's not about you.
Actually, it's just because I don't have a penis. So then they're like, great.
This is awesome. This is awesome.
So yeah, men also have that weird complex. But I think then dating women where it's like, again, it just changes.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and yeah, women they actually are harder to impress, or you know, they might have standards.
There's no cheap thrills here. No cheap thrills.
There's no cheap thrills. Buying her a drink is not going to impress her. Like, get with the program. And again, even if you like someone that much, it doesn't mean that they're going to like you back.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I will say that's been different in rejection is that I see the men that I meet and their reaction to how their reaction to the rejection, and then I experience the rejection also like from a woman. Like I also know what it's like to get rejected from a woman, by a fly shoddy. It's tough.
It's tough because you think you're the best.
You think you fly, and you think, and then she's like, and that's sore. Like, you know. But again, even in my reaction, it's just been like, okay, regroup. Then I go buy a drink for myself.
Yeah.
But it's like the men that I interact with, it's never like that. Then it's like, oh, well, I never liked you, or oh, F you, like whatever. And
I always start crying. I had a dude who cried once when I said no. We were in the bedroom and we got really heavy, and then at some point I was just like, eintlik,
I don't
I don't want this anymore. I'm going to retract this consent. So I said to him, yeah, like I was feeling it, but I actually want to go home now. It's like 2 a.m. and I'm starting to get dressed, and he goes to the bathroom and he comes out like with tears on his eyes. He probably
Was it real? Yeah, I was like, was it real tears or was it?
And he was like, I didn't understand how you could do this to me. Like we were already there.
Look, I was 20 at the time.
Okay.
I was very young. So I might have pity fucked him afterwards. Now I would never do that.
Yeah.
To the young ones. You don't have to do that. Don't mercy fuck people, guys.
Yeah.
I used to mercy fuck quite a lot of people because they would cry or do like weird
Do
stuff.
something weird, now you feel weird. Yeah.
It's been 13 years since that time. I'm 32 now, so I've learned a lot. But like when you just start having sex, people will manipulate you and they'll try to make you feel bad for being like, ain't like, I don't want this anymore. Like you don't have to mercy fuck. Some of my friends who I was friends with at the time, still friends with, they'll remember back in the day, I used to be like, just pity fuck him, man. It's fine. It's fine, just pity fuck him. I would actually say that to people when I was 19 years old. They're like, man, I pity fucked a lot of people. It's fine. When you're there and you look at the dick and you're like, ish, the meat isn't what it's, what you want. But
Charity.
But I'm gonna, I'm like, girl, this is not an NGO.
That's what I'm saying. It's not a feeding scheme.
You're not an NGO.
So now, like, obviously, many years later, I'm like, damn, girl, you had issues.
You were giving some bad advice.
Someone gave me bad advice.
That's the thing.
Again,
and
it's
it's natural. Yeah, it happens.
So I must cater to you even when I check the meat and I'm like, this is not happening. So I must still cater to you.
Yeah.
Like that is what we're taught, and that's sad. My number could have been so much lower. Not that numbers are important. I just mean that there's a couple of people I wish I could have unfucked.
Yeah.
And again, like you can even change your mind. Like,
You definitely can.
in the situation, like you said, where you retracted. If you retract and you want to go home again in the morning and you're like, actually, I lied. You can do
still
that.
go
You still
back
have the freedom of
after.
doing that.
Exactly,
You see? So
yeah.
it's like, again, but in some circumstances, you might wake up and be like, actually, I was right. So like, I'm glad.
Thank
I'm glad
goodness.
I
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, but I think
That is very
we are getting towards the end of our conversation. I'm not sure if there's anything else that you guys want to touch on.
I need to think.
Shit, did we even speak about the stuff that we're going to talk about? I mean, I literally just realized I'm looking at thinking about all of these things.
No.
Personally, I just think that people need to write their own chapters on sex. We have so much of, older people when we were younger telling us what sex is, what it shouldn't be, how you should feel about it, how you should not feel about it, what you should open, what you should keep closed, right? So it's a lot of this, like inserting into our brains before we can even
Make
understand
decisions.
it ourselves, right? So for now that we're older, now that we're of consenting age, and now that the internet is there and we can be smart by Googling stuff, right? Now I just think that I'm encouraging people to write their own narrative and their own understanding of it and unlearn the things that is harmful to you. Like that is the most important thing when it comes to sex. It's not about finding a definition. It's not about finding the best sexual partner, about having the lowest or the highest number, or about not having an STI ever in your life. No one cares about those things. That's not really the important thing. It's how do you want to think about sex? How do you want to engage with sex? And being okay with that changing over the course of your lifetime. That's the only thing. And then you can extend that understanding past your sexual life.
Yeah.
Be fluid in all parts of your life, and I think you'll be able to find magic.
And really, yeah, I agree. I think also we have to, and we've touched on it so many times during this conversation, is like as much as we need to, like, we expect other people to practice safe sex and to show up in a way that makes us comfortable. Like we have to take ownership and take accountability for our own sex lives and for the sex that we're having, and make sure that we are responsible partners to others. Like we can't always have that expectation like, yeah, like they must be prepared or they must like check themselves. Like we have to also, like, as much as we're receiving, we have to give. And I think that that's really changed my orientation, and that's made me a better sexual partner, is when I realized, okay, this is also my thing. I also need to take responsibility. And that's not only for safety, it's like for pleasure, for what you like, for what you want this moment to be. I think it's so nice to insert yourself and make yourself, like, prioritize yourself in the experience, like as much as you prioritize your partner. Because I think the rhetoric has always been, as a woman, you must be subordinate, and it's this experience that happens to you. It's happening to you, or you have to be this pinnacle of like the sexy girl who's going to do the things. I think it's so important to prioritize, what does it look like to you? How do you want to be centered and valued in this experience, just as much as you want to give to someone else? Like, I think that has been my little 2 cents or my baby step in my sexual journey right now. And that's making me really happy. It's like centering myself as much as I center the other person is really important.
I love that. Like, I don't want to make this about age, but you're like 8 years younger than me. And just hearing you say that as someone, you know, who is in their early 20s is beautiful, because it took me much longer than that. Like, I was already on my journey at the age of 24. I was writing about sex and all of those things, but it took me a very long time to actually get to the point where I'm like, I'm fine with it not being that way.
Yes.
You know, or centering myself. Like, this feels good. I'm going to center myself. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I hope this happens younger and younger and younger. And it doesn't have to be about sex. Again, it can just be about your body.
Life, yeah.
Again, like you said, I don't want to touch you. I don't want you to hug me. I don't want to do these things, but I'm willing to do this, you know? And it's just nice to hear that these conversations are happening younger and younger. It's beautiful.
Yeah, 100%. I think also, like, the one thing that I always say is, like, we all have access to the same internet, like, you know, and I think that, you know, it's not harmful at all to yourself to just brush up on, like, knowledge that you might not have. Like, how long do girls get periods for? If you need to know that, you need to know that. You know, do a cheeky little Google at night when you can't sleep. No one is reading your search history. Like, you know, besides the government, it's really not your FBI agent.
But be, like, as I say, be street smart when you go out. Be URL smart. Don't go into weird links where they're going to teach you weird stuff, right? And if you're looking for a feminist understanding, add the word feminist to it. Like, feminist education on menstrual health. If you want something more progressive, because we don't know what your algorithm is going to give to you when you Google certain things. So if you want something more progressive, type that into your keywords as well. Be URL smart. Like,
especially, like, even you said authors, like, don't read an article about marginalized communities written by a straight man, like a straight white man. Don't read articles about women's health written by men. You know, just be a little bit smarter. I think that's some very, I think, insightful information. We have reached the end of our conversation. We hope that we've given you guys a lot of stuff to think about, and hopefully more to actually talk about with your friends, with your family, maybe in your phone.
With yourself.
Yeah, with yourself. But yeah, we really just want to get the information out there. Kim, I want to say major thank you to you to coming out today and bringing the vibes and bringing the jokes. I don't think we could have done it without you. Mbali, thank you so much for your contribution.
Thanks.
Always a great time to work with you.
And you, always, babe.
Thank you so much to the audience for watching. We just want to say a major thank you to Levi's House of Strauss for hosting us today. In their beautiful, beautiful space, as you can see all around us. So thank you to them for collaborating with us on this. And we hope to see you guys again sometime soon.
Thank you so much for watching and for sharing your time with us. Please remember to like, follow, and subscribe. Our account is @Black Health on all social media platforms, and Kim is @Blazing Non-Binary.